Hello everyone and welcome to our Reading Iftar event tonight. It's an absolute pleasure and honour to be here with you all. I'm Maisha Aaron, a project coordinator at the Dialogue Society, and today I'll be hosting our event both on behalf of the Dialogue Society and the Fellowship Educational Society. So we're united here today around the theme of rekindling our community spirit. Something which I think we can all agree is especially important as a nation over the past 14 months we've seen some very difficult times. I hope today can shine some light and inspiration onto the amazing work our communities have done together throughout this period, and also for what our future may hold. Now, as it seems, there is some light at the end of the tunnel as we're coming out of the lockdowns. We have an amazing lineup of speakers here with us today, and musicians, of course, as well, and a Kahoot quiz as well. So please do make sure you have an extra device ready for that. But once again, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you all, both our speakers and viewers, and hope you have an enjoyable evening. Of course, I'd like to thank both the Dialogue Society and the Fellowship Educational Society for their hard work in making today possible, as well as all our speakers who have accepted invitations for tonight's event. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I just want to kind of briefly introduce both charities and then pass on to our Quran reciter, Osman Özdemir, to recite Quran, and then we'll get started with the lineup of speakers. So the Fellowship Educational Society is a charity working in the south of England in three main areas: education, integration, and community building. And they've been doing tremendous work during the pandemic, from food distributions to needy families, to providing online courses in both English and maths, tailored specifically to BAME immigrant communities, youth who have, reports have shown have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. So, this Fellowship Educational Society wanted to make up for that gap that they may have missed by being absent from the school environment. Society also provides ESOL English tuition courses for adults with 40 students, aiding their linguistic skills and helping them integrate into society. They've also provided secondary and college students with psychological support during this period, as well as providing insightful sessions for their parents to be involved in as well and become aware of the issues that youth face during this difficult time. And they've also informed them on issues in areas such as career support and providing and supporting equal opportunities for these students as they go on to progress through GCSEs, A-levels and other educational degrees. So I don't think we can undermine the work of the Dialogue Society at all, of the Fellowship Educational Society at all, and they're playing a crucial role in the south of England. The Dialogue Society works in a very similar field of community building, and as a member of the organisation, we've been busy through the pandemic by trying to carry all our activities online. And this today fast-breaking meal, something that we've been doing for more than 20 years in person, now being online is an example of that. We've also kind of launched a Befriender initiative, Talking Bubble, which does provide a majority of English service, but also has now grown into providing a befriending support in other languages as well to tackle loneliness. We've organised several panels on issues within our community, such as women empowerment, racial equality, British values, and we've developed reports from these and had workshop on these issues, and tried to keep the work that we would be doing in person alive in our online world as well. And I'm sure today will be an example of the excellent work both charities are involved in their field, as well as we have interfaith and inter-party leaders here with us today from our community, coming together around the theme of rekindling our community spirit. So without holding us back any further, I'd like to invite Mr. Osman Özdemir to recite some lines from the Quran for us. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. May peace be upon you all. Thank you, Aisha, for this auspicious program for inviting me here. It is a great pleasure to be with you. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فسبحان الله حين تمسون وحين تصبحون، وله الحمد في السماوات والأرض وعشيا وحين تظهرون، يخرج الحي من الميت ويخرج الميت من الحي، ويحيي الأرض بعد موتها، وكذلك تخرجون. ومن آياته أن خلقكم من تراب ثم إذا أنتم بشر تنتشرون. ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها، وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة، إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. ومن آياته خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف ألسنتكم وألوانكم، إن في ذلك لآيات للعالمين. ومن آياته منامكم بالليل والنهار وابتغاؤكم من فضله، إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يسمعون. ومن آياته يريكم البرق خوفا وطمعا وينزل من السماء ماء فيحيي به الأرض بعد موتها، إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يعقلون. صدق الله العظيم.
Thank you very much for your touching recitation, and I'm sure our viewers were able to kind of follow the English translation as well. But we were equally touched by the meaning in Arabic too. So thank you very much. Thank you for being here with us today.
With pleasure. Enjoy the rest of the night.
Thank you. Thank you. And we will be coming back to you at the very end for our call to prayer. So thank you for being here throughout the whole program with us. So just before I do kind of pass on the microphone to our first speaker, I wanted to also briefly touch upon why we initiated these community fast-breaking events and why we're here today. So although the Dialogue Society isn't a religious organization, We are inspired by the Islamic teaching that a sincere dialogue and appreciation and engagement with our diverse communities is a foundational element in solving social issues and enhancing social cohesion, which some of the verses we just saw kind of touched upon that message as well. And for Muslims and for several of our volunteers, Ramadan is a month in which this case is, in this sense, is heightened as we engage more with the Quran. At the Dialogue Society, we've coined this Ramadanification. And what Ramadanification means is an embodiment of the values of Ramadan. So Muslims aspire to be shaped by Ramadan, fostering a period of reflection and reunification, especially in terms of coming together with their communities, whether Muslim or non-Muslim, or of no faith at all. So Ramadan evolves from being this lunar month to a virtue. And at the heart of our society is compassion for one another, and we hope to develop creative strategies, like this being one of them, and maintain solidarity. We hope to believe that simple dialogue is the way forward in making meaningful community relations. So thank you all for being here today with us and embarking on this journey of being Ramadanified all together. And without further ado, I would now like to pass the microphone to our first speaker, the Mayor of Reading, Councillor David Stevens.
Aisha, thank you very much for that. Well, I think the first thing to obviously say is thank you so much for inviting myself and other guests. We're thoroughly looking forward to hearing and learning this evening. I was most interested, I think, in the title of the title you've chosen of the evening, the rekindling of community spirit in Reading. And I think that's absolutely right, and I completely applaud, which is obviously an admirable sentiment. I have no concern or issue with that at all. And particularly, I think I pick up on your point that you raised at the beginning about tackling loneliness, because what I'm seeing as we start to move out of the sort of the lockdowns and starting to move around Reading, particularly the weekends, there's an incredible number of people are now out and about and starting to really sort of say rekindle their lives and resume, and particularly I think notably the sort of the restaurants, pubs, people are sitting outside and really enjoying one another's company again. I see that, but I guess what we're not seeing, and I think this is probably plays to your theme, is a number of people I think are still probably quite apprehensive. They're still concerned about the risk of the disease, and I think those people will need more encouragement and more help to get out and be supported. And I think that's probably that's what I take from your title. The other part of it, I would say, is what's impressed me so much throughout the pandemic is how people have come together, supporting one another. And I think certainly the Muslim communities are very much at the heart of that. And a number of us, and I think the Bishop of Reading and others attended the High Sheriff's Awards about a month ago. I can see Bishop Olivia nodding, so that's good. And what impressed me was the staggering number of nominations for the High Sheriff's Awards. The number that actually then again came from Islamic community or indeed interfaith groups, and the staggering way in which the people had just reached out, were helping, were sending out, I think, food banks, all sorts of things to help their local communities. And I think you can be very proud of that contribution that you made. And so hopefully we will carry on with that sentiment as we move out of it. I don't think that will be lost. It certainly was recognised a few weeks ago. I think most of us recognise it now. And I think moving forward, as we move out, we'll take that spirit forward. And for those people, as I say, that I think are more nervous, more apprehensive about coming out, we'll draw them out, pull them on behind with us, and really get out there sort of enjoying the summer. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for inviting us. And I see that sunset's not due until 8:20. So there's a bit of a wait yet before we're allowed to have something to eat. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for kind of, I think, reminding us that we are at the beginning of the journey. Some of us are feeling that community spirit. Some of us are a bit more apprehensive. So hopefully we can work together to kind of unify us all. So thank you very much for your contributions. Now we are on to our second speaker, Mayor of Wokingham, Councillor Malcolm Richards.
I think you can see me. Can you hear me? Yes. Good Good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to attend and speak at your, I've grown in size. Thank you for inviting me to attend and speak at your Ramadan event this evening. This past year, 2020 through 2021, had been a most dramatic and eventful year for the entire world. It's been the most dramatic era for almost 80 years. Wherever you live, be it on any continent, in a large or small country, and regardless of your culture or religion, or even a non-belief, you cannot fail to have been unaware or unaffected by COVID-19. And that, of course, has added enormously to the need of people for various things, whether it be loneliness, food, or treatment, or whatever. Its impact has been considerable in many ways, in matters of life and death, employment, finances, education, travel, technology, scientific developments, and finally, hope. And that aspect of hope, combined with well-managed scientific technology, distribution, and common sense, plus compassion, is beginning to deliver the results. But there is still a long way to go. So what's the relevance of COVID to my brief talk about Ramadan and about your event? Ramadan, of course, is an Islamic religious event. I am not of that faith, but from my education, life's experiences, and lots of reading, plus my friendship with people of many different religious beliefs over the years, I've obtained a reasonable understanding of the differences and similarities that exist in people across some of the main religions of the world. And it seems there are a great many similarities, and quite happily, many of those similarities relate to being good to your fellow man and being helpful. One very common and wide-ranging similarity is that of being a good member of society and the community, and being kind and supportive to your family, friends, neighbours, and others, and to provide assistance to those who may need it. And the points I've just listed there are all in there under the aims of Ramadan. I've done a fair amount of reading. You won't be surprised to know I've done a fair amount of reading recently to fill in the gaps in my knowledge. I will outline a few of the points which, to be my understanding, and illustrate what we've done for community. So I've done that reading, and I will chat away, and maybe you can mark my Islamic homework at the end of it to see if I've got it right. I will try and be brief. I know obviously that Ramadan is an annual event held in the 9th month of the year, but that year is based on the lunar calendar rather than the Gregorian calendar that we have. And the lunar calendar has something like 355 days instead of 365. And so events which are dependent on the lunar calendar being the moon's cycles, events which are based on that will change each year according to the moon cycles. So they change each year, and it also depends on where in the world you live. So, of course, it will all be Islamic people observing the Islamic festivals, but the actual dates will vary around the world, based, if nothing else, on the fact that summer and winter have longer and shorter days, and they are in different parts of the world. We're very different, obviously, to Australia. So we have that, and now, in terms of the community side, we at Wokingham, the council side, and indeed amongst my colleagues, have a lot of, I've been involved in a lot of community events and activities and supports. We have things like hubs that volunteers help, lots and lots of volunteers, as well as people from the council. And they deliver food to people. They collect prescriptions from chemists for people. They phone them up to have a chat, even if they can't visit. They do visit if they can, phone calls if not. And it avoids things like, it helps to minimize loneliness, sadness. It also, of course, allows us to find out how well people are and whether they need visits for doctors and nurses and so on. So we're doing that sort of thing, and that's a good community thing. And the point about all the volunteers we have is they come from pretty well all the religions across all society. And that's the point about a community. It's all inclusive. Whatever religion you are, whatever view, whatever your individual views are, it helps to be working towards a community across all those boundaries. And I think we have done a fair amount of that. We looked quite specifically at the things that Ramadan says that you are supposed to be doing, quite apart from not eating and drinking in the hours of daylight, which must be pretty tricky to follow during hot summer months, I have to admit. I taught at Reading Technical College for many years, and in the summer months it was quite tricky. And the students there, many of whom were Muslim students, they survived with, we all had bottles of water and all sorts of things, and they were all sitting there looking a bit sad. So they had the self-discipline, which is a good thing to do. And from what I've read about it, the self-discipline is one aspect of it. The deprivation up to yourself of things you would like to do or want to do or enjoy, but you don't do in order to understand what it's like for people who are suffering or don't have things. So it's understanding through that, through deprivation, it's understanding the community, it's being friendly and supportive, and all those sorts of things. So it's listed as the main objectives of being Islamic and Ramadan. And so I think the community spirit there is indicated not only by those rules, but also by people following them. And I can count firsthand for most of those from my teaching days in various locations and from my council days and from colleagues and friends over the years. It's a good aspect to have. It goes across boundaries. COVID has obviously made things much worse in the last year. So there are always people in need. So Ramadan has a job to do every year and throughout the year, but it's particularly heavily needed at the moment because of the difficulties of COVID. So it's a need for community. It's being provided at various levels. It's hope it will continue. Obviously, COVID has prevented a lot of meetings face-to-face with people. But luckily, because of the technology available, such as this with Teams and Zoom meetings, we are at least able to get in front of people, face on a screen, even if it's not personally face-to-face. So technology has helped there. The development of vaccines has been fantastic. If anything, that must be a fantastic community contribution because it goes around the world. And I think we need some compassion with the distribution and use and allocation of those vaccines so that the problem, which is worldwide, is dealt with on a worldwide basis. And I think that is a wonderful thing. So thank you again for inviting me along this evening. I'm pleased and honoured to have been invited and to have had the opportunity to speak to you. So thank you very much for that. And if you wish, you can mark my homework afterwards. Thank you.
I'll mark it right away. You explained many of the values much better than I would have done. And we do have a Kahoot quiz towards, in a bit, coming up very soon. So I'm sure you'll score highly there as well. So thank you very much for your contributions and also talking about, what you've been doing in your hubs and the communities and volunteers coming together and sharing that inclusive community spirit. So thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thank you as well.
Thank you. And we're just on to our next speaker now. We have the MP for Reading West and the president of COP26, which is a very interesting job, the 26th United Nations Climate Change Conference. We have Alok Sharma.
Aisha, thank you so much. And salam alaikum to all our friends on this call. And it's great to be taking part and celebrating this evening with you. I think as other speakers have said, this has been a really, really tough past 12 months for people up and down the country, indeed across the world, I think, as the Mayor of Wokingham quite rightly said. But we have seen that community spirit over the past year. People have come together to support each other. You've seen the support that people have given to the NHS. I think what's really great is that as we come out of hibernation, if I can put it like that, forced hibernation, we are seeing that sort of human contact rekindle. People are meeting again physically with their friends, with their family, and that by itself is, of course, going to ensure that we come together again. And it's so important that we support, as the Mayor said, those who are lonely. I'm someone like many of you who has elderly parents, and they have spent a lot of time by themselves. And of course, there are people who are single, elderly people who have spent time literally by themselves during this past year because of the lockdowns we've had. And I think we need to reach out as a community, as individuals, to make sure that we support all of those people. In the past year, before I took on this role as president of COP26, I was a business secretary in our government. I know that as a government, as a nation, we have risen to the challenge of providing support to individuals, to businesses, very many millions of people supported thanks to support from the taxpayer overall. And that, I think, has been great. And of course, vaccines, the mayor of Wokingham mentioned, as business secretary, the procuring of the vaccine doses sat in my department. And I'm really pleased that, we've now have an immunization program that is running so well. But the mayor is absolutely right, is that, of course, we support ourselves, but we also must look to support others, other countries which are not as fortunate as us. So we have had the UK government, the taxpayer, I can put it like that, is making £548 million available through a facility to support developing countries procuring vaccines. And the Prime Minister has been very clear that our surplus vaccines will be made available to those countries as well. But as we look to an economic recovery, as we look to how we build back together, clearly one of the things that I am seeing from around the world, both when I was business secretary, but also in my new role, is that every country that I talk to is looking to build back greener as well. And I think this is the COP26, which is the UN climate conference, where literally the whole world comes together. Almost 200 countries around the world will come together in Glasgow so we can make progress on tackling climate change. And I would argue that climate change is ultimately the biggest challenge that we face as humanity. It is literally about the future of planet Earth that we are talking, and we have a short period of time in which to ensure that we take the commitments, the actions to get global warming under control. And if I said to you that a child born today in our country, or indeed anywhere across the world, before that child has finished its primary education, the future for the planet will have been set. It's as stark as that. And really the warning lights are flashing bright red when it comes to the need to tackle our climate. But I do think that COP26 can also be a moment where the country, the UK, the world comes together, all of us, not just world leaders, but all of us come together and rise to the challenge of tackling climate change. And earlier this week, I had an opportunity to talk to faith leaders. Yesterday, Bishop Olivia took part in that, and it was really a great and incredibly gratifying to hear faith communities taking such a clear interest in helping in that process of all of us understanding why nature matters so much, why the environment matters so much, and of course, why we need to do everything we individually can to heal our planet. But it is also, in the same way that we try and fix the environment, it's also about providing hope and jobs for the future and economic growth. And I want to leave you with one particular statistic, is that as a country, through successive governments over the past 30 years, we have demonstrated that we've been able to grow our economy by 75% and yet cut global emissions at the same time by 43%. We have shown that green growth is possible, good for the environment, good for future generations, but also good for the economy. And that's what we want. And I think that is the unifying spirit that in my role, I want to foster over the months ahead. And I hope we will, in November, be able to come together and collectively as a world be able to say that we did our bit to tackle climate change. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I pass back to you, Aisha.
Thank you very much for reiterating the importance of community and unity through the lens of your specific role, but not just because it's your specific role, because as you emphasize, it's on the basis of the future of humanity. So it's a very crucial point to touch upon. So thank you very much. I really liked when you mentioned rekindling after hibernation. So I made note of that quote. So thank you very much for being here with us tonight. We are now onto our Kahoot quiz. And there are a couple of prizes for first, second and third. It's £50, £40 and £30. Please do make sure you have a second device ready for the quiz, and it should be shared on our screen very soon. Okay. And everyone's allowed to get competitive. So if you just follow the instructions on the screen, so join at kahoot.it and then enter the PIN, you should be able to start in a bit. Perfect. I'm not sure if we can have a timer on this. Around half of those attended are on the Kahoot, so please do make sure you can join if you can do.
Shall we start?
Yeah, I think we can start. Let's start. Yeah. So the first question is, what do you say during Ramadan? Yes, do you say during Ramadan? The answers are very similar. So don't put this one. Yes, Eid is the celebration at the end of Ramadan. So that wouldn't be said during Ramadan, but towards the end. Well, at the end. Which much loved game was invented in Spain? Ooh. I got it incorrect. Congrats to the 5 who did get that one right. The first text message was sent in Reading, but what did it say? What was Wokingham famous for in the 1600s? These are all very unique questions. I didn't get that one right either. You can't see me on the board because I'm not doing so well. What does Wokingham mean? I'm going to read the question once it's on the board because it's a bit long. Eton College is well known as being a factory for British Prime Ministers, but how many has it produced? Bricks made in Bracknell were used to rebuild which famous building? Which film did Reading's own Kate Winslet win an Oscar for? The Beatles started their first UK tour in which Berkshire town? Reading is the proud home to the first of which restaurant in the UK? How many clocks are there on the Windsor Castle estate? And I'd just like to congratulate the first few because I think they are stably set in the running order. Muslims pray how many times a day during Ramadan? And this is the number of the obligatory prayers that Muslims pray. They can pray more than that as well. 3, 2, 1. During Ramadan, iftar is eaten before the sun sets. True or false? So our penultimate question, why do Muslims fast in Ramadan? And our final question, what is the prayer that is only done during Ramadan? Congrats, DBS, for coming third. Abu Bakr for second position. And first position is ES. So I'm sure, and of course the runners-up too. I'm sure we'll be in contact with you so we can get your prizes to you as well, hopefully. So thank you very much, everyone. I hope you both enjoyed it and learned a fun fact or two during the quiz. Just going to go on to our next speaker, MP for Reading East, Matt Rodda.
Sorry, just having some issues with the iPad. I hope you can hear me okay. Aisha,
Yes.
thank you. That was a wonderful set of speakers earlier, and thank you so much for introducing and running this event. And I particularly liked the recitation, and it was wonderful to have the English translation as well to help us to follow more of the detail. I've been reflecting on your question, which I thought was a very poignant one, asking really what is community spirit, and I think it's an incredibly relevant question to ask at this difficult time. You know, when you think about what people have been through in this area in the last year, it's something that really was very hard to imagine. Looking back a few years, who would have thought that we'd now be here after a year of a global pandemic, which has affected so many people in our area and around the world. And I do think you've asked a very pertinent question. I've got a couple of reflections I just wanted to share with the group, and also to thank everybody for their own contributions. And I suppose some of those are reflections about what I've seen and heard from friends and seen from around the world through the media. I was talking to a friend who works in the Royal Berkshire Hospital earlier this week, and it was incredible to hear from her what she'd experienced and her colleagues in respiratory medicine had experienced. Quite overwhelming, and also the pressure that's been under, that their teams have been under, and how they're now starting to come out of that. And they obviously hope that they won't be put under that pressure again, but there are concerns about a third wave. And I found it really quite moving listening to her talk about it, and also to talk about a colleague who'd lost her father. And I think in some ways community spirit is about, or it's reflected in the professionalism of our NHS and other key services at this time. But in other ways, it also has been, in my view, demonstrated by some of the small things that people have done. I don't know if you've seen in the road that you live on, perhaps we all have, you know, the box of books or kids' toys that people have left outside in such a thoughtful way for their neighbours or for passerby to pick something up. And in some ways, the pandemic has allowed people to express a community spirit which perhaps they wanted to express before, but maybe hadn't had an opportunity to. And then the other thing that I've noticed, which really is quite a concern at the moment for so many people, is the way that the pandemic has affected certain countries around the world, and certainly our own country at times. But it's been awful to look at the news and to follow what's happened in India or in Brazil or in Italy some months ago. I was talking to somebody on the campaign trail earlier today. Neither of us have family in India, but we were both reflecting on how awful it must be for people in that huge and wonderful country at this difficult time. So there are so many different things, I think, which we can consider when we think about community spirit. And I suppose the thing that I would like to suggest to everyone here tonight is what I believe we must do as we go forward is to really think about how we can demonstrate in our own lives and perhaps in our wider community across the Reading area ways of building community spirit in a positive way, both through institutions that we love like the health service, but also in our own lives through work that we do ourselves in our communities, whether that's a particular group of people or maybe a sports or social group or in some other way. And I hope that we can all do that together and we can show some of that common sense and thoughtfulness, which has been so evident during this incredibly difficult time. And I welcome the opportunity to speak tonight and also listen to other people. It's been really quite something to come along tonight and to enjoy the different reflections from different people, and to be able to do that with colleagues from across the political spectrum as well. And some very thoughtful points, I should say, made by Alok Sharma as my colleague, whilst we're obviously in opposing parties. I would just like to share and to point out my support for the COP process, and I think he's in a very important role. And I wish that the British government has every success in its important role in pulling the world together. It's a very difficult time, and we do all need to think about our own personal use of carbon and also ways in which in organisations or through the government we can push for carbon reduction. It is very serious, as he said. So once again, thank you for inviting me and for the opportunity to speak, and great to listen to all the other speakers. And I think you've posed some very thoughtful questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt, for channeling us back to the very question of why we're here, you know, the topic of community spirit, and for sharing your own reflections. I love the example of, you know, people leaving books and toys outside for their wider communities to you know, use. So thank you for bringing us back to that point. I'd just like to pass the microphone on to our next speaker, Reverend Olivia Graham, the Bishop of Reading.
Thanks very much, Aisha, and good evening to everybody. It's wonderful to be with you all in such excellent company, and Ramadan Mubarak. Rekindling community spirit. We're emerging from lockdown, but I don't know that community spirit has ever died, actually. We've had some wonderful ways in which it's been evident in the last year in communities which have cared for each other and looked after each other. During COVID, we have all been experiencing the same storm, but not from the same boat. Some people's boats have been small and leaky and unstable in the waves and tossed around and battered to pieces. And some people have ended up in the water. Not all of them could swim. And some people's boats have been large and stable and beautifully fitted out, and they've been sailing quite easily through these rough waters, experiencing no more than a little seasickness, perhaps. The most vulnerable among us have been clinging to rafts or lifebelts, and some of them have not even had that. And many in their boats have lost their rudders and their sails and haven't been able to control their direction or speed of travel. So it's been the same storm, but it's impacted us very differently. Our communities have reached out wonderfully to those who are wet, those who are drowning, those who are rudderless, and those who have watched in horror as their loved ones have been lost in this terrible storm. And that's been really inspiring and welcome and warm, and it's exactly what I would expect of faith communities. But as we emerge from COVID, I think we need another kind of community spirit. We're glad, of course, to be able to see each other again, to be able to walk in the sun and go into the shops and meet with each other in a garden and sit and talk. And we're looking forward to the hugs and kisses and reunions with those that we love. Of course, we have to continue to look out for and look after those who are lost and anxious and suffering in many different ways. But the community spirit we now need is also the solidarity of not getting carried away. It's the solidarity of moving forward together through this period cautiously, because this storm could return. It's not over, and it's still, as we know, raging with great fury in other parts of the world. We're really devastated, as Matt has said, by what we've seen in India and other places. And what's happening there is perhaps the result of not enough caution, not enough care. Our community spirit is kindled by love, and the loving thing to do at this time is to be very careful in the way that we act in order to not put each other at risk. So we need to care for each other, we need to watch our behaviour, but there's something else. And I want to just return to what Alok was talking about. I was very, very struck by the prominence of creation in those wonderful verses from Holy Quran, which Osman recited to us. And these reminded me that we need to rekindle our community spirit in the service of our planet, our common home, which we treasure and which we rejoice in. We're all, I know, hugely aware of the peril which our global community faces because of the terrible damage which we're doing to our planet. And we are aware also that if we don't limit the warming of our planet to close to 1.5 degrees centigrade, then there's a real existential threat to life as we know it. Alok's already talked about this and Matt's referred to it. This is the legacy that we are responsible for and which our children will inherit. So the COP26 talks in November are absolutely crucial. And we're really pleased that Alok has been with us this evening, that he's chairing those talks. But we must recognize it's a huge responsibility on his shoulders, and he needs our prayers, the prayers of all of us, for what he's doing. And one of the ways in which we must come together as communities is in solidarity and commitment to action on the environment. So I love this word, Ramadanification, and my hope is that our Ramadanification might include the care of our planet in the personal choices that we make in our daily lives, and also in the ways in which we insist on the right political and economic choices in order to get climate change under control, and on behalf of those who are most impacted by climate change across the world, the poorest and the most vulnerable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for reminding us firstly of the disproportionate impact of the pandemic, and then the importance of kind of moving together with the solidarity, with your metaphor of the storm, and linking, rekindling to love and love for one another and for our planet. The issue of climate change is something that I think impacts each and every one of us now and will continue to unless we do change. So thank you very much for being with us today. Our next speaker is someone we're very, very fortunate to have amongst us. It's one of our students from the Fellowship Educational Society who has written and will read an essay that she's written on the topic of rekindling the community spirit. So Noor, whenever you're ready, we're ready. Thank you for being here with us today and sharing the work that you've done.
Hello. COVID has impacted all of our lives in a different way, for some more drastic way than the others. For us students, this pandemic brought quite a few changes in our lives, such as online learning and cancellation of our exams, especially GCSEs for me. This caused the majority of the students, myself included, to mess up our routines and mindset towards classes. This led me to come to a realization that if I didn't take responsibility for my own self-discipline, I could possibly derail and give up my classes. At least this was from my point of view. Fortunately, I was really lucky to have my family with me to help me through this, but not everyone was the same, and not everyone had someone there for them. For most people, isolation led to loneliness and other different mental health issues. As a natural human response, we were scared of this new thing that was rapidly spreading and tried to prevent it from harming us. From my observations, at first the sense of togetherness wasn't really there because everyone was fearful and they were scared that it was going to come to them too. But as time passed, we could see cases of good Samaritans that helped those in need. Even if we can't have contact with people to keep safe, this doesn't mean that we should completely ignore each other. Sometimes knowing that there's someone there that cares about you can also help boost the morals of these people. These acts can be shown with small and simple gestures that even students like me or adults could do, such as writing a letter for someone, chatting with them from a safe distance to see if they're doing okay, or checking in with our friends. Of course, these small actions can be bigger or smaller. So in conclusion, I think that in these harder times, showing compassion and care is essential, having the mindset of a community, helping each other to pass through this. Thank you for listening and giving me this opportunity to share my opinion.
Well, thank you, Noor. Thank you for sharing your lovely reflections and your personal take. Sometimes we can get carried away, but it's always lovely to hear, the voice of the youth and the voice of our future. And I'm glad that you've been able to find some structure in your studies and pull it all together. I'm sure you're a leader amongst your youth as well. So thank you very much for being here with us today, and hopefully we can see each other soon. Just going to go on to our next speaker now, from the Aisha Masjid and Islamic Center, Imam Yahya.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear.
Thank you very much.
We can hear you, Mawlana.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. First of all, I would like to begin by praising our Lord, the Almighty, and I would like to thank everyone who has taken their precious time out today and gathered here for this, wonderful purpose. And we want to thank the people who are behind this, who have organized this event. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless it, shower his blessings upon their families, themselves, inshallah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create peace between them. Now, alhamdulillah, thank you very much for the organizers who have invited me today. I think last year I came as well. Now this year I wanted to speak about something that, what we've been through, not just, one community, the whole world, what they've been going through in the last year, the pandemic, and, how it has affected everyone, to be honest, people from different countries, different race, different religion, how it affected. So, what came into my mind is the saying of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that he says, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب أخي ما يحب لنفسه. That you are not a complete believer until what you like for yourself, you like that for others, and what you dislike for yourself, you dislike that for others. Now, as a Muslim, this is a teaching from our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As my duty as a Muslim, I have to look after myself and my family, along with that, my neighbors. And when it comes, Allah says, God says in the Holy Quran, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَالْجَارِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْجَارِ الْجُنُبِ. Now, he says, be kind, be gentle, do ihsan, look after your parents, look after your relatives, be dutiful towards those people who are close to you, be dutiful to your neighbors. Now, what does it mean by neighbors over here? Neighbors mean people from other religion, people from other faith, people from other race, people, not just, you are not, just because if you're a Muslim, it's not your duty just to look out for Muslims only. No, your duty is, these are the words from the Quran, your duty is to look out for everyone as human beings. I'm a human being. We are all human beings. It's our duty to look after one another. And the time like this, how it went, many people, especially the people at the front line, we had the NHS, we had the doctors, all those people who are working very hard with the patients and etc. But as community and as faith leaders, we as well tried our best to, not just help people we know, even the people we don't know. It becomes our duty to help one another. Now, what happens when we help one another? As this is part of my belief and our belief in our religion, when you go out and help another person, that makes you humble. That makes you humble. And that what that does, it makes your heart, it softens your heart. It softens your heart and it makes you humble. And if a person is humble, then it's easy for this person to do good and stay away from evil. And this is what we want in our community. This is what we want. We want this everywhere. We want people to help each other, people to do good, and people to help each other to stay away from evil. And if a person does that in our religion, and I'm sure other faith backgrounds, people from other faith, is very similar. This is very similar thing. If a person does that, then they will have, their hearts will be content. And this is something that Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is the one, as our belief, he is the one who controls our hearts. He is the one who puts in our hearts good, good, and he pushes us to do good. When we think of doing something good, he will help us to do good. And as we are in the blessed month of Ramadan, a month where we need to purify ourselves, a month where we, again, like I've mentioned about our heart, the way we stay away from food, water, the same way we need to stay away from evil habits, maybe backbiting, accusation, having ill thoughts of others, having, all those evil, all vice thoughts, the same way we can stay away from eating and drinking, even though we can. No one's watching us, but we still can, but we don't. The same way we know Allah is watching us. That's why we're not drinking, we're not eating. The same way we should try our best to, refrain from those habits, the evil habits, the bad habits that we have. So these were some words that came to my mind. And I hope I, first of all, take benefit from it, and everyone who's here takes benefit from it, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Imam. I'm just guessing you're in the mosque now getting ready for Maghrib as well, and the breaking of fast. So thank you for being with us at such a tight time as well, and for sharing your messages of unity, of solidarity, of kindness, of our common humanity, especially during the holy month of Ramadan. So thank you very much for.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have a video from Judith Silva and some illustrations of marbling art. Well, I know that was a pre-recording, but thank you very much, Judith, for contributing with music, and it just goes to show how diverse our communities are with talent as well, and how we can have the message of rekindling our community spirit through so many different mediums. We're going now on to a video display of marbling art.
Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the art. Thanks for having me. Bye bye.
Now that video we just saw of Afra, who was a beloved colleague of mine, is actually from quite a while ago. Unfortunately, Afra was going to be here with us today, but she's had a bit of an accident, so she wasn't able to be here with us today. And she's one of our kind of tireless volunteers who helps out with nearly every iftar event that we do with her art productions. So we just like to say, you know, get well soon from all of us here. I'm not sure if you are watching, but I know there are some people watching from YouTube as well. So just a very warm get well soon from us here as well. Just going on to our next speaker now. We've got the Deputy Commander of Reading, Chief Inspector Andy Penrith.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very conscious of the time, so I'm going to try and keep this fairly brief because I know there's probably some very big things on a lot of people's minds at the moment as we get closer to about 8:20. I just wanted to share, I guess, some of my own personal experiences from growing up prior to my police career, as well as my view from policing here in Reading. I was very fortunate enough to have spent several years living in Egypt as a teenager growing up, and I didn't really understand what community spirit was, or didn't know anything really about community until my first Ramadan, and that month of Ramadan when I was living in Egypt. And I'd really echo Imam Yahya's words earlier around that duty to look out for everyone, because as an outsider and as a foreigner living in Egypt, I've never been made so welcome as I was during Ramadan. And people opened their homes and opened their hearts, and the generosity and hospitality was fantastic. And it didn't matter who I was, and it didn't matter who they were. And it was a very special time. So Ramadan will always have a special time in my heart and in my family's heart, I know from the time that we spent there. So it's a real pleasure and a real honor for me to be here and sharing this with you all this evening as well, just from my personal experiences as well as professionally. We've spoken a lot about COVID, and it's difficult to really ignore that subject, and it's something that has had such a massive impact on the world around us and everybody within it. And it's a real humbling leveler, I guess, because COVID didn't discriminate based on age or faith or anything. And, you know, if anything around faith, it's tested many people's faith rather than discriminating against it. And I think we've got some very difficult times ahead, and we're not really going to understand the true impact, I think, that the pandemic has had on community and that community spirit. Although I'm incredibly heartened that events like this are going ahead, because it shows that whilst we're all concerned about the lack of community spirit potentially, that actually perhaps it's still alive and well in everyone that is doing this fantastic work out there in our communities and reaching out to people, especially, you know, we've had the voice from young students, from those involved in faith groups, in different faith groups, from our representation in government, and it's fantastic to see everyone on the same page, on the same message. In policing, I guess to summarize, we have quite a unique role that often we see society's worst. And times like this in the pandemic even show that there are people out there who seek to do each other harm in the most difficult of times, and will seek to exploit each other and increase suffering and build upon the suffering that's being inflicted by things in the pandemic. But what's really fantastic and what's really inspirational is that we also get to see society's best, and society's best far outweighs society's worst who seek to do harm. And it's that charitable spirit that's out there in society, in the majority of society, that is just absolutely embodied in events like this and in the Muslim community observing the holy month of Ramadan, bringing people together, unifying people in that spirit of community. So I'm immensely proud to be involved in working in the public, especially so at the moment, and very proud to have been asked to be here tonight. And I'll leave it there. So thank you very much for having me. I hope people have a wonderful iftar when we get there in a few minutes' time. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I mean, we thank you for both your service and for being here with us today. It was lovely hearing about your reflections from your own personal life in Egypt, and then how, you know, your career in policing also kind of shapes your view. So thank you very much for being here with us tonight. Just going on to our next speaker, we have the Director of Reading Refugee Support Group, Mr. Nick Harbin.
Ramadan Mubarak. My name is Nick, I'm the CEO at Reading Refugee Support Group and the chair of Reading City of Sanctuary. Thank you for inviting me to this Ramadan celebration. I'm honoured and I look forward to this event every year. Refugees and asylum seekers can often face perilous journeys seeking safety and sanctuary in the UK, and they are often deeply traumatised. Many of the people we meet and support at Reading Refugee Support Group have lived through the most dreadful experiences, unimaginable to most of us. They've faced devastating losses. They've lost their homes, their livelihoods, their communities. They've been separated from loved ones. Many have witnessed terrible violence, been tortured, seen family and friends maimed, seen family and friends killed. Beginning of COVID in March last year, 90 asylum seekers were placed in a hotel in Reading. Many of them arrived in the UK in actual boats. Asylum seekers and refugees in the UK and here in Berkshire still continue to suffer acute anxiety about the complex asylum process. They worry about accommodation, money, education, access to legal advice. They fear detention, deportation, destitution, homelessness, and hate crime. There's a constant concern about loved ones left behind or missing, let alone worrying about the impact of COVID-19 on everyone. I was asked to speak tonight on how we can rekindle our community spirit with lessons learned from this past year to implement a long-lasting peace and unity. Well, I can see it in action every single day. The support we see from people in Reading, Wokingham and West Berkshire offering friendship and support to refugees is amazing. At the hotel in Reading, a whole new charity sprung up to help provide food and clothing, the Reading Red Kitchen. Care for Calais set up drop-in centres, all staffed by volunteers. Reading Refugee Support Groups worked with Bishop Olivia here tonight and the High Sheriff of Berkshire, Mary Ryle, and secured some funding to put in place support to provide mental health support. Many of the members of the public donated food and clothes, and computers and phones and toys and sewing machines. They befriended people, they held online English lessons, the list goes on. And that's just an immediate response to the arrival of 90 asylum seekers on a temporary basis. Reading Refugee Support Group has been supporting refugees across Berkshire for 25 years. And we work alongside the same human spirit and compassion, for instance, with the Gossip Girls in Wokingham and the West Berks Action for Refugees in West Berkshire, all people volunteering over and above their day-to-day jobs to help refugees. You will likely never hear their names or be able to even thank them, and yet they go on and on helping other people. This surely is the beginning of long-lasting peace and unity. And it comes from the hearts of people, regardless of creed, colour, religion, race, and one which reflects the mix of people here tonight. That's why I look forward every year to attending this event. It fills me personally with hope. I met Mahmoud many years ago. He's here tonight. The first time I was invited to this event, I sat down, a bit lost, unsure of what was going on. Mahmoud made me feel very welcome. Every year now, I look forward to seeing his smile and greeting him again. Every year, I look forward to the hospitality and the friendship from everybody at the Dialogue Society, the Friendship Education Society, and everybody attending. If only everyone was so lucky. In Berkshire, we need to help refugees make sense of their experiences. We need to be able to support people while they wait for their asylum decisions, and we need to help people draw on their resilience and strength to recover and start rebuilding their lives. My request here tonight is that we all make an effort to extend our friendship, not just to refugees, but to each other, every day to everyone. When we have said hello, how are you? How can I help you? To everyone, we can rest. Until then, we all have a job to do. Thank you. Shukran.
Thank you very much, Nick, for sharing some insight into the experiences lived by refugees and the role that the community, the larger community, has played by both in terms of volunteering and donating to what, so-called, foreigners in quotation marks. It's amazing work that you're doing. So thank you ever so much for the work that you're doing and all those volunteers that are supporting your network. We do have one speaker left, but it is time to call prayer. So we'll go to Mr. Osman Özdemir for the call of prayer, and then we'll be back with Sarah afterwards.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت سيدنا محمد الوسيلة والفضيلة والدرجة العالية الرفيعة إلهي وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته إنك لا تخلف الميعاد.
Thank you very much, Mr. Osman Özdemir, for supporting us so much today, both at the beginning and now. So thank you very much, and hopefully I'm sure everyone enjoyed your participation as much as I did. Now I'm just going to backtrack on our schedule and go to the Reading Interfaith Group, Sarah Griffin. You're muted.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
I feel incredibly honoured to be here. I feel incredibly honoured to be alive. It is humbling, really humbling to be among you this evening. And I say it from the bottom of my heart. I've been listening to some wonderful speakers. And particularly at this time, the challenges, Sarah, follow that. And I'm stuck on the first word, which is rekindle. And I'm stuck because the word kindle reminds me of bonfires. To be honest, I'm a little bit relieved that Alok isn't here with his concern for global warming, because I'm going to have to make a confession. Because when I was little, I used to love bonfires. And when I hear the word kindle, I remember my grandpa, and I remember kindling bonfires. And kindling bonfires is like kindling, rekindling a community. And I appreciate that some of you are very hungry now, but perhaps if you can give me the opportunity, I'll explain why. I can remember those cold winter afternoons in the back garden, those days before green bins and pesticides. And we would kindle bonfires together. My grandpa would only light a bonfire after dusk on a Sunday, and you always checked first that no one had their washing out. Because sometimes when you kindle, it's possible to be so caught up in your own beliefs and ideas, and you become a public menace to others. And he used to say to me, aim for a well-contained wisp of smoke. Avoid the blazing inferno with how strongly you feel something. However strongly you feel about something, and I feel very strongly about interfaith, it comes from my love of history and my background and growing up in Libya. It doesn't give me the right to burn down my neighbour's fence. And my job was making newspaper knots. And you make a newspaper knot by recognising that that newspaper in your hand is about the past, not the present, or you'd be in a lot of trouble. And you used to tie them up really, really tightly and put them at the bottom. They are your foundation for your bonfire. Reading Interfaith Group has been around since 1983. It's one of the oldest interfaith groups in the country. And it's always been a learning curve for me. Mistakes, we've made quite a few, we'll make a few more. It's how we learn. Our mistakes are nothing to be afraid of. And then you would collect little tiny bits of sticks and straw. And you learned very quickly that if you stick on a big branch of ego tree, you'll get a great big waft of smoke in your face. You'll even put the fire out. And I think all our religions begin with humility, a journey of self-discovery, rather than to ever understand it all, or to believe, even to believe you think you might understand it all. The journey begins with understanding what it's properly like to be human. And you should also learn never to underestimate anyone. On a wet, rainy afternoon, it's still possible to light a bonfire. It takes a little bit longer because you have to scrape away the bark. And then you find that the centre is dry. Be prepared to spend time listening and supporting other human beings, even though they can be really, really annoying sometimes. When you get rid of those unhelpful layers of status, possessions, and even ego, you find that the centre is dry. And then you light a fire. And it's magic. Warmth, transformation, cleansing, rejuvenation. One small bush in the desert burst into flames, and it transformed Moses. Christians have recently been celebrating Pentecost, an experience of fire. And so what is this power that you can create by kindling and rekindling? Absolute power. And as we're talking about human beings, we are talking about love. Love draws people together, transforms them, gives them freedom, a law to live by. Love unites us. And then the morning afterwards, the bonfire has died down. There's a little pile of ash. And in those days, you used to spread the ash round a seedling to stop the slugs from getting at them. And we know that there are lots of nasty beasties around, of bigots and even terrorists who seem drawn to something evil in the name of religion. That's blasphemy in any religion. All religions are designed to make us better at being human. We don't need to be afraid. Those little circles of ash are a reminder that what we do for love, whatever we do for love, lasts forever. And so we've got this opportunity now to leave this meeting changed. We're different people from how we were when we first turned on our computers and saw all these friends of ours together. We're changed. We're here to kindle. And I'm going to quote someone from my own faith background. I'm a Quaker. Let us see what love can do in these challenging, traumatic, unhappy, frightening times, terrifying times, suffering. Let us hold fast. Let us keep faith, and let us see what love can do. Thank you so much, my friends, for inviting me.
Thank you, Sarah, and it's such a lovely message and metaphor to end today's discussion on. So thank you so much for deconstructing the word rekindling in such a very nuanced and personal way, reminding us of our common unity and humanity. So thank you very much for being here with us today. And a big thank you to everyone who firstly made today possible, and sharing messages of unity, compassion, themes, and rekindling our community spirit. A huge thank you to all our speakers, and those who shared the message through music and through art. And thank you to our viewers who joined our journey of rekindling the community spirit, both through this Zoom discussion and then also on the live YouTube broad stream as well. So thank you very much. I hope everyone has a lovely evening, and I look forward to seeing you all, fingers crossed, hopefully at a future event in person. So do take care and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Eva. Bye-bye.
Lovely to be with you all.
Yeah.